start shortly. I don't really like to use these microphones. I sort of like to walk around a little bit, get the feel of everything. Can you hear me okay? Yes, in the back? Good to go? Okay, great.
Ladies and gentlemen, can everybody hear me?
It's not.
Okay, hallelujah, here we go. Okay, hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank the faculty, staff, and students and other guests for attending here at your college today, and I'd like to extend a welcome to everybody. At this time, if you have cellular devices, if you can just make sure they're on silence or vibrate, we really appreciate that. And on behalf of the History and Political Science Department, it's our pleasure to host Kevin Crane, an expert with the security clearance process, and we appreciate that he is here to join us today. And I'd also like to give a shout out to a few folks that were instrumental in helping us put together today's event. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my boss, Dr. John Altman, the chair of the History and Political Science Department, for supporting us in this endeavor. I'd also like to thank Lori Nolte and Desiree Kyle for the administrative support in allowing us to coordinate for the Meester, as well as the other support that they provided, as well as the IT department for your tireless efforts to ensure that basically all the audiovisual support that we have is up and running and properly working. As we get started, Mr. Kevin Crane will basically describe his book, Access Granted, and will explain to the audience the application process, common mistakes made by applicants, and how the interview process works, and what is also involved in the adjudication process when you go to seek a security clearance. Likewise, Special Agent Kevin Crane retired, grew up in a small Catskill Mountains mountain town called Hancock, New York. He attended the Pennsylvania State University, where he earned a BA in pre-law. And his career history includes employment at I.E. DuPont Company in Wilmington, Delaware, where he worked for a year as in corporate security. And in 1985 began his career as a U.S. Special Agent with the Defense Investigative Service, which later became the Defense Security Service, and finally the Federal Investigative Service under the Office of Personnel Management. Prior to his retirement in 2006, Kevin worked eight of his federal years as an assistant special agent in charge of Wrightstown, New Jersey Investigative Field Office. And he is a longtime member of the Fraternal Order of Police, the First Federal Lodge in Philadelphia, PA. And his wife Phyllis is also present with us here today. So please join me in a nice round of applause to welcome Kevin to the stage.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me ask you this. I always sort of like to feel out what my demographic is. If you're a freshman, raise your hand. Let's see what we got. Freshmen, nice and high. Okay. A lot of freshmen. Fantastic. Sophomores, raise your hands. Roughly about the same. Okay. How about juniors? Okay, good number of those. And last but not least, seniors. Okay. You guys are getting ready to get out of here. I remember my days as a freshman at Penn State. As Dr. Weaver pointed out, I came from a small town in the Catskill Mountains. It was real small, probably about the size of this room, actually. And when I went to Penn State, it was like overwhelming. I thought I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I basically went to my classes and just did my thing. I didn't really have a whole lot of guidance. Somebody who could sort of lead me by the hand and tell me, you need to do this, this, and this to get this career. So do any of you feel a little bit lost as to really how to go about starting off in your career? Raise your hands if you're just a little bit not sure of what the process is. Don't be embarrassed. Good. I'm glad I said don't be embarrassed. Okay, good. Well, today what I would like to do, and it's a little bit challenging to take the world of the security clearance process, which includes the paperwork, the investigative process, the interviewing process, and the adjudicative process. But what I'd like to do, and I think I did it fairly succinctly, I'm going to give you some basic information in a very condensed format It's all in my book. It's all open source information. Of course, the way I'm going to present it to you is from my perspective as a federal agent and a supervisor with 21 years of doing it. I've interviewed over 10,000 people. I've looked at and reviewed over thousands and thousands of records. I've interviewed murderers, rapists, child molesters, drug addicts, people with alcohol problems, people with serious financial problems. And if you have any of these issues, we can certainly talk about it privately in the breakout group we're going to do, or somewhat generically here. There is hope. So if there's anything in your background that you have some concern about, hopefully after we talk, you'll feel a little bit better about it. So I'll give you some tips, some guidance, some advice, but I will always say, whatever you do, when you either apply for a position with the government or defense aerospace contractor or even the military, just be honest. Because when they do your investigation, if there's something that you didn't put because you were afraid it was going to stop you from, say, getting a security clearance, oftentimes that's worse than having listed the situation itself. But we'll go through it a little bit, and I'll continue to ask you maybe a few questions as we go. I'd like this to be somewhat interactive. I know oftentimes when you listen to speakers, your mind can absorb as much as your seat can endure. So I don't want to sit there and bore you, but I would like it to be interactive. Any questions you might have, just raise your hand. And there'll be a Q&A at the end. So anything you want to know, please, I'm here to help you. I want to help you, as does Dr. Weaver, get the type of career that you want. Most of the positions with at least the federal government are going to require at least a basic investigation. I'm going to talk more so about the security clearance investigation, but it also applies to the basic investigation as well. Just the security clearance is a little more in-depth. So let's go through it. I wrote this book. My publisher put it out on Amazon last March, and within a couple of weeks, within their categories that they put them in, it became a #1 bestseller. I've always wanted to write a book, maybe for 10 years at least. I finally got a chance to sit down and do it. My wife and I have 2.5-year-old twins at home and about to be 14-month-old, so he wasn't quite around when I wrote the book, but the twins were, so our lives have been very busy. We also, believe it or not, run a child care center for the last 8 years, voted best in our county for the last 2 years. Then we do a few other things. We have a business venture that we do called Fuse Joint Venture. You can write that down if you want, look it up on the internet. Fuse Joint Venture. I'll give you my website towards the end. But let's get into it a little bit. Okay, this is for you guys. I customized this particular thing for you guys. Now, if you want to take notes, feel free. If you want to take a picture of the screen, I don't care. It's for you. Anything that I can do today to help you get your career tomorrow, it starts now. All right? How to get any type level of clearance. If we can get you up to a top secret clearance, we can absolutely get you a confidential or secret clearance. Top secret being the highest, with a few things sort of above it in that category. Okay? Can you see this okay? Yes? Okay, good. As I said, many jobs in the federal government, military, 90% I think in the military, as well as the aerospace defense contractors, that would be your Boeings, your Grummons, your Lockheed Martins. Oftentimes they're going to require a security clearance. So any one of these categories, if you're looking to take your major and go work in one of these locations, chances are you're going to need some type of a background investigation. It may or may not entail a security clearance, but you'll know as you apply. All right. The levels, you've heard me mention it probably twice already. Confidential, secret, top secret. Oops, go back one more. Okay. How do you get a security clearance? When I was you, I never even knew what a security clearance was. Now, I'm going back 30 some odd years ago, and I knew about the various jobs that were out there with the government. My father was a federal agent. Most of the people who came to my home were either police officers, state troopers, sheriffs, federal agents. So I knew about law enforcement in general, but I didn't know that other than applying for these positions, there's another aspect to it, and oftentimes these jobs are contingent upon successfully completing a background investigation. So how many people here are in the major intelligence analysis? Raise your hand. Okay, excellent. Now this, from what I understand, is the first year for this particular major. So you guys that are starting off in it, this is a great, great thing. There's a lot of different places you can go to work, but the trick is, let's begin that process today. Whether it's with Dr. Weaver and or this presentation, with whatever you learn, absolutely take a few notes. They don't have to be copious notes, but take a few notes, because what you learn today is ultimately going to help you either get a job with the government or the military or defense contractor, or not get a job. So I don't know who's your big competitor in sports. When you guys play sports, who's your big competitor for college purposes? Do you have one? For sinus?
Messiah.
What is it?
Messiah.
Messiah?
Yeah.
Here's the scenario. You and a student from Messiah College or university, whatever they are, they go for the same job. You're there sitting with this person, and you both are highly qualified. Your grades are the same, your activities are the same, your internship experience is the same, and the job requires a security clearance. But here's the difference. You, being from your college, have had the opportunity to be taught by a man who actually lived the life as a military officer, which you rarely get something like that, and he's got a wealth of experience, but you're also now, you have the guy coming in who was a federal agent and a supervisor, now telling you how to prepare for that security clearance. The person coming from Messiah didn't have that experience. So if everything's equal, other than that, who do you think they're gonna hire? They're gonna hire you, because I'm gonna give you some tips on how to prepare to get this job. So, you know, you can get out of college with whatever student debt you have and get a job paying $40, $50, $60,000, whatever it is, or maybe not. So let's do some things to make sure that you get the job compared to somebody else. And that's what my job is today, is to help you to do that. Okay. Some of the things that we do when we conduct these security clearance investigations, and to some extent, just for a basic investigation to get a job with the government, would be certainly an FBI record check. This is a very strange, ever-changing world that we live in today. When I was growing up your age, we always had problems per se, but with terrorism and things of that nature, you just never know who's applying for certain jobs. And even once they get the jobs, sometimes they become radicalized, and it's a problem. So we absolutely have to have a vetting process, if you will, and that would be the security clearance investigation. We don't want to give classified information or access to classified areas to people who are not trustworthy. So it all starts today. So remember, all your actions from this point forward are going to mean even more to you, because now somebody's telling you, I want you to be careful what you do in your life here and from this point forward, so you can be proactive and not get in trouble. It's a whole lot easier avoiding problems. So when they do that FBI record check, that's going to tell them if you've been arrested anywhere in the country. Anywhere in the country. Battery's running low. You know what? We may need to plug this thing in. Do we have a plug where we can plug this thing in? I just want to make sure we don't actually lose this. Yeah, give me one. Such as summary type offenses, maybe you got caught drinking someplace, and instead of being a misdemeanor or a felony, it's a summary offense. They don't send it off to the FBI. The FBI wouldn't be aware of it, and that's why the government will do these police agency checks wherever you've lived, worked, or gone to school. They will also absolutely run the 3 major credit reports to see about your credit. Believe it or not, the #1 issue that people are denied a security clearance, about 40% are denied because of credit issues. That could be, say, maybe college students getting too many credit cards, maybe not paying those credit cards, more importantly, on a timely basis, maybe having to file for bankruptcy because you misappropriated your funds. There are other reasons that people have financial problems. Sometimes you get sick and you're out of work. So there are legitimate reasons. But if you have any type of financial problems, now's the time to fix it. And anything I talk about during this seminar, I want to tell you now so that when you do go for these positions, and you will, when you know that you're going to have to complete paperwork for a security clearance or a background investigation, it won't be too late to fix the problem. If we take care of it a year or 2 or 3 in advance or prevent the problem, by the time you go for the job and they say, we're going to offer you the job, but it's contingent upon you passing a background investigation, don't fail it because your credit was lousy. Think about that. Next time you're spending your money using your credit cards, you know, if there's gambling involved, I know some people like to gamble a little bit. I'm talking about serious problems. You haven't paid your debts for, say, 120 days or longer, and, you know, you have no reason that you didn't, because you will be questioned, all right? They will also absolutely interview, especially for a top secret clearance. Sort of a little difference here with the confidential and the secret clearances. They tend to pass that more on record checks, stuff that could be automated, get done real quick. You may actually get that passed within, you know, maybe a month or 2, depending on how quickly it goes through. With a top secret clearance, they're going to absolutely do all of the above, and in particular, they're going to interview people that you've gone to school with, people that have been your neighbors, co-workers, friends that they'll develop on their own, the federal agents will, or they'll also ask you for listed references. So keep that in mind, because if people know something about you, if it's serious, somehow it's going to get out. But if you take proactive steps and try to lead a pretty normal life without getting too wild, obviously in college, there's a lot of things that go on. Believe me, at Penn State it happened too. There's a lot of things that go on that, you know, you have to ask yourself, is this going to stop me from getting a job in the future? If I participate in this particular activity, you know, is it going to be for fun and it's normal stuff, or could this lead to potential issues? There's no sense in going to college for 4 or 5 years, spending a ton of money, and then not being able to get a job in the field that you went to school for because your background is not good, and it could have been prevented. So it's something to absolutely think about. Okay? I also put down a possible interview of yourself. Now, for a top secret clearance, you're probably most likely going to be interviewed for sure, and that's going to cover a whole lot of questions. If you're applying for a confidential or a secret clearance, and you know it's for confidential or secret, and you're asked for an interview, it's probably because you've listed something on your standard Form 86, and that thing's about 120 plus pages long, and that covers everywhere you've lived, worked, gone to school, foreign interests, financial, drugs, alcohol, the police, everything. It's a bear. It's a real beast. And anything that you list that's of a negative nature, or maybe you didn't list it and it was discovered, maybe such as an FBI record check or a credit issue, they will come and speak with you, but they'll speak with you just on that issue. You may have to give a signed sworn statement, and that could be it. If it's real serious, they may go and speak to references. If not, if it's for a top secret clearance, you will be interviewed. They'll cover all the things that you listed on your standard Form 86. I mean, when I say it's a hassle, it is absolutely a hassle, but don't let that get in the way of your college career and your real career that you're going to have someday, all right? I know a lot of people graduate from college, averages, I don't know, $26,000 to $30,000 in debt. They end up working in restaurants, they work at malls, they end up working at bars, or anywhere other than what their major was for. I don't want you to waste your time. I want you all to have great careers, and if this is the field that you're going into, then you're absolutely going to be faced with this. It's not anything to be worried about or scared about, but we're going to take these proactive steps. One is being aware of what's going to be asked, And the next thing is to either, again, prevent issues or we're going to fix some issues. Any questions so far? Ask me anything as we're going here. Anything so far? Go ahead. Yes, sir.
If you don't have any credit yet.
The question was, what if you haven't had any credit yet? Not a problem. If you have no credit, there's really nothing that can surface that would be of a derogatory nature. And when I mention issues, whether it's credit or anything, we're looking at derogatory information. And if you don't have a credit report because you've never applied for a credit card, nothing to worry about. If you've taken a student loan, you'll have a credit report because that student loan will be on your credit report. Anybody here take a student loan? Okay, pretty much most of you. I know I had to. I couldn't have gotten through school if I didn't. So, but that's a good question. It doesn't come up often, but it could. Any other questions so far? Anybody? Okay. All right. Do's and don'ts. Do's and don'ts for a successful background investigation. Again, I condensed this. There's so many things. If you download my book off of Amazon, Kindle, it's like 99 cents. You can do weeks and weeks of research and probably get all the information yourself, but if you want it all condensed in a nice Kindle version, 99 cents, get it. I'm not here to hawk the book, but it's actual, packed full of gold nuggets, trust me. Do a review, your standard form or SF-86, to see what information you're going to need before completing it. How many people, let me ask you this, how many people here believe, based on the career that you think you're going to have after college, how many of you believe that you're going to need some sort of a security clearance? Raise your hand. Whoa, that's a ton of you. Okay, if you did not raise your hand because you don't think you're going to need a security clearance, how many of you believe that you'll need at least a background investigation of some sort? Okay, a few of you. So pretty much everybody's here. The majority, you believe, are going to need a security clearance, and then a few of you, at least some sort of a background investigation. The number one reason that investigations get sent back, when you fill it out on paper after you've downloaded the form, I'm going to tell you to download it, when you go for it, you can't sponsor yourself. You have to be sponsored for a clearance by either the government, an aerospace defense contractor, or the military, any of the branches. They're the ones that request the clearance on your behalf. You complete the paperwork. I'm going to ask you to, if you haven't already, some of you I think have filled it out. Is that right, Dr. Weaver? Okay, so you've seen this beast. I'm going to tell you to fill it out, keep it with you, and update changes as you go. But read through it, because the biggest reason the investigation goes from where it could have taken maybe a month or two, it could take 3 or 4 or 5 months in total because you messed up on a zip code. It's crazy. It absolutely happens. So in our haste to get this darn form done, people rush through it. They think they're reading the question correctly, but they're giving an improper answer. The investigations, for the sake of the zip code, that's how it goes out to the field offices, wherever you've lived, worked, or gone to school. It goes to that zip code. And if it goes to the wrong place, that investigative field office can't do any work. They have to send it back electronically, and then it has to get reopened and go to the proper place. In fact, they might even have to interview you just to fix your form. And this could take, again, extra months of time. So don't do that. Absolutely be sure of what you're doing. And I put, don't rush through completing the form. Check the zip codes. Don't leave out any required information. Typically, once you get to the point where you're on the computer and filling out the electronic version, it normally won't let you go any further unless you filled out all the information that it requests. And if you've lived in various locations or worked at various places, there are extra boxes that you can fill in to get it all covered. So it should let you not get any further unless you have the whole thing covered. But again, the most important thing is do be honest in all sections of this form. All right? If you're afraid of something that you think is going to stop you from getting a security clearance, I hope you're going to be in that breakout group that we're doing. If not, you can absolutely contact me. In fact, here, I'm going to give you 2 ways to contact me. I'll give you 3. My website, Write this down. I'm telling you, if you got a piece of paper, don't regret it. If you have your phone, you want to put it in your phone, let's just take a minute and do it. It's Federal Security Clearance, Federal Security Clearance.net. Don't put .com. I don't know where that'll take you to. But Federal Security Clearance.net. And that has my information on the front page. There's also some videos you can go to look at. I've been interviewed ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News twice. I've been in U.S. News and World Report. So I guess what I do have to say has some value to somebody, but today's going to have value to you. That's one way you can reach me. My email is very simple, your clearance, your, Y-O-U-R, clearance at AOL.com. I probably, I don't know, 20-something years ago when AOL first started. I'm very loyal to my brand. Yourclearance.com. Now, if you fill out this form because you know you're going for a job, or maybe you have an issue that you're not part of this breakout session, if you want to contact me, my phone number is listed. I'm going to give you my phone number. I don't typically do it, but I'm going to do it for you because I care. 610 area code 517-4007. And I had that for almost 30 years. I didn't ask for it, but strangely enough, 4007. So again, 610 area code 517-4007. If you call me or text me, let me know that you're from your college. Oftentimes, if I don't recognize who's calling me, and I get a lot of calls, I don't always answer. I'll let it go right into the message. So leave a message. Just say, hey, this is, John Smith or Sue Jones from your college. I heard your presentation. I'd like to ask you a question if I may. And if I can at least get back to you within 24 to 48 hours, I'll call you, email you, however you contact me, and then let me know what's on your mind, and we can speak in private. Okay? That's just for you guys. When I did this at Penn State, I did not even give them that information because it's just too many people. But for you guys, I'm going to do it. And, where else can you actually speak to a retired federal agent that actually cares about you? All right? I do. I know Dr. Weaver cares about you too. So that's the ticket with that. Okay. Best ways to prepare for your investigation. Again, here we go. I mentioned earlier, you can Google it, the SF-86. Just type in standard form or SF-86 on Google. There's the site itself. I don't know if you can see that far. I can see it here. Maybe your eyesight's better than mine. Get this form. Have it in your hands. If you don't already, I know some of you do. But if you don't, get this form, just so you know what you're dealing with. It's always best to know ahead of time what's going to be expected from you. So please, get this form. It might take a minute or two to download because it's that big. But save it. Save it. Put it on a flash drive, something. So, if your computer crashes and you filled this thing out, you're not going to lose the information. Absolutely do that. And I say complete it now before you accept a job, because as I said earlier, if you go for a position and they tell you that, and you should know ahead of time that you're going to need a security clearance or a background investigation, it's too late to fix the issue. I don't want you to sit there in an interview getting all excited, I know I got this job. I know I had a great interview. I'm going to start off at $40,000, $50,000, or $60,000, and then they tell you you didn't successfully pass your background investigation. And I would feel real bad myself knowing that, we tried to get this fixed ahead of time, and most of you will probably listen. I know, human beings as we are, somebody's not going to take this advice. Somebody is not going to take this advice, and they're going to lose a job because they did not prepare. Don't let that person be you, please. A couple other things I suggest. You don't have to do it, but if you want to really get into this, go ahead and have an FBI fingerprint check done. I know in our area, the one on the right this thing does this. Yeah. I have cogentid.com. We go to our local intermediate unit, and they'll actually, you sign up online. It's $27, I think, and you come in for an appointment. They electronically do your fingerprints. You'll get the results in about a week. You'll know if there's any type of an arrest on you. So I would hope not, but sometimes people's names come up in these things, and it's not you. It could be somebody else. So I would do it, and there's another reason I would do it anyway, because I want you to get the results, and I want you to hold on to those results, and I'll tell you why. You can also run a state police check. In Pennsylvania, we run them all the time, and FBI, we do that. We also run a child abuse check at our child care center. All our teachers have to have a background investigation. So I would recommend the second thing you do is run a state police check on yourself. I think they're maybe $8 now. They lowered the price a little bit. And you'll see, and you know if you've ever been arrested, obviously. Nobody ever forgets, although I've had a few people tell me they forgot they were arrested when I was investigating them. Nobody forgets they've been arrested. Trust me. But get a copy of that as well. It's going to serve you a purpose. Who here has ever run their credit check? Raise your hand. Nice and high? Okay. Maybe about half of you. All right. You're entitled to a free credit report from all three of the major credit agencies. Absolutely free by law. You can go onto my website and just go down to the link below. I've got a lot of links below for different agencies, all the military, Homeland Security, for jobs, Office of Personnel Management. But absolutely go to annualcreditreport.com. Write that down, text it to yourself. I don't care what you do. Take a picture of it. Go to annualcreditreport.com. And this is what you're going to do. You're entitled to 3 a year. So what you're going to do, all right, you're going to request one of the 3. And then, 4 months later, you're going to request the second one. And the last 4 months of the year, request the third one. And what that does, that allows you to have 3 separate credit reports that cover the whole year consecutively. All those months consecutively. So if there are any changes that come up, you might not even be aware of. You're more likely to catch it. Now, most people never do this. They either request one or all 3 at the same time. I will put a caveat here. The caveat is this. When you apply on annualcreditreport.com, and it's all legit, one or more of those 3 agencies might ask you to complete the information and mail it to them. They may not take it online. Oftentimes they will. You fill out where you live, they ask you a few security questions, of these 4 addresses, have you lived at any of them, etc., etc. But if you have to mail it in, do so. Please, I want you to have a full year, 4 months, 4 months, 4 months, one from each of the agencies, so you keep on top of your credit. Remember what I said earlier, 40% of the people who are declined a security clearance is because of a financial reason. That's not going to be you. From this point forward, we now have a game plan of what we're going to do to be proactive. And that's why some of these other college students that are going for your jobs, they're not going to get them. You are. There's going to be another trick at the end, I'm telling you. So I want you to get a copy of your FBI, in addition to your standard Form 86. I want you to get it. I want you to fill that out completely and keep it updated. I want you to run an FBI fingerprint check and keep the results. And update it every year until the point where you're ready to graduate. Okay? I want you to do the same thing with the state police. Get it? It's easy to do. You can get the results like in 5 minutes. And print out for the state police the certificate. When the results come up that there's no arrest, you have to print out the certificate. Okay? It's free. Just print it out. So now you're going to have your standard Form 86. You're going to know all the questions. You're going to have all the answers. You're going to take your time. It's going to be accurate. You're going to have the FBI record check, which I hope there'll be nothing on it. You'll have the state police record check, which again, I'll hope there's nothing on it. And then you're going to have your credit report. You're going to have 3 of them over the course of a year. You're going to do this stuff until the point where you're ready to graduate. And we'll talk about why. Okay. I mentioned the reasons that the clearances are denied. What I did was, again, just for the sake of trying to compress this a little bit, we could talk all day long, literally, probably 2 days, with all this information. It's just too much. So I narrowed it down. With arrests, corrective action, well, of course, avoid them to begin with. Try not to get arrested. Remember what I said? If you're going to participate in an activity, think about if that activity could possibly get you arrested. All right? There's a lot of drinking that goes on. There's experimenting with other things. We'll talk about that as well. Think about what your actions could lead to. Is it worth losing 4 years and a degree of not being able to get the job that you want because you can't get a security clearance or pass a background investigation? So avoid them to begin with. List everything as you're supposed to. I mentioned always be honest no matter what. And again, if you are interviewed, absolutely be truthful with whatever federal agent should interview you. I know sometimes they use contractors. That turned out to be a fiasco. Boy, I wrote a little bit about that in my book. Never let something that's motivated by money influence government policy, especially when it comes to national security. That's all I'll say on that. Disclose that you have no future intention of ever being arrested again. When the federal agent sits there and says, let's talk about this arrest, you're going to tell them who, what, when, where, how, why, what's happening now, and what your future intentions are. Do you ever see yourself getting arrested for this particular action again? No, sir. And they'll put it in a statement. Basically the same thing with drug usage. Remember I said a lot of drinking goes on in college and other things? Listen, in high school and college, it's not unusual for experimentation to happen. Not unusual. Raise your hand if you understand what I'm talking about. I'm not saying you did it, just raise your hand if you understand what I'm talking about. Okay? All right, just got to read between the lines. If you know anybody that has experimented, I would, of course, say, stop immediately, but truthfully, I don't think that'll happen. But you will need to list all your usage, any type of involvement, whether it's marijuana, cocaine, anything. They're going to ask you, what you've used, have you sold, possessed, trafficked, manufactured, how far back, how often, under what circumstances, with who, when was the last time you did any of this? Anybody can corroborate that information? What are you doing today? Are you still using it today? Honest to God, I had a guy come in, and I'm interviewing him. One of the issues was drugs, one of the issues. So I said to him, John, when was we're here talking about your use of marijuana. I don't remember if you listed it or we came up with it. When was the last time you used it? He said, Special Agent Crane, last night. I was so nervous about this interview. Really? He absolutely did. I had another guy come in. He was a real salty guy. I had to talk to him about alcohol. So I think I was 24 when I started off. I was probably about 26, 27 by the time I got this guy. And it was an alcohol issue. So he comes walking in. It was at a shipyard, Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, before they got rid of it. And he walks in. He's on time, sits down. I ask him a question. He gives me an answer. And I said, have you been drinking? He said, yes. And I said, when were you drinking? He said, this morning. I said, get out now, and don't come back until you have no alcohol in your system. We'll try it tomorrow. But if you come in and you have alcohol in your system, you're done. So, this is what people do. It's funny when you think about it. I can laugh about it now, but I was extremely upset when this guy came in under the influence of alcohol, and, he knows he's going to speak to a federal agent about his security clearance. So you have people out there like this. I know none of you are going to be like this. I hope none of you are. But anyway, so we have drugs. One of the things I did put here, sort of in the middle, when you do explain why, there are going to be reasons that we do what we do. The government's going to look at the whole person concept. I might be jumping ahead of myself here a little bit. They don't want to know just the negative things. They also want to know, well, what was the rationale behind doing some of those negative things? In this case, I put, maybe the person used drugs because they were young, there was peer pressure, experimentation, etc. Those are all what we call mitigating circumstances, and every single issue that a human being can get into that the government cares about, every single issue, there are mitigating circumstances. So when they adjudicate or make a decision about giving or denying a security clearance, they're going to look at the issues and what the explanation was to see if there are any mitigating circumstances. Now remember, I said always be honest. So if this type of, in this scenario with marijuana, you used it because you were experimenting, peer pressure, high school, college atmosphere, you wanted to see what it was like, but you stopped. And I would say, stop as soon as you can. It would be better to tell the investigator, I stopped last year because I knew that my job for my career choice required a security clearance and I was not allowed to use drugs, so I stopped. As opposed to somebody saying, you know what, I think I'll stop tomorrow after this interview because I've seen the error of my ways. Now, when the adjudicator gets these things, who do you think they're going to hire? The guy or girl from York who said they quit a year ago, or the one from Messiah? Yeah, that said, I'll stop tomorrow. This is absolutely what they look at. I've actually had people tell me, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue because I don't feel that it's a bad thing. I don't know, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not a bad thing. I don't care what you do. But because the federal government says that in order to get a security clearance, you cannot be a current drug user, that might carry some weight. It doesn't matter what I think. It's not personal, but I do have to report a fair, accurate, unbiased investigation. And by the way, we're going to put it in a signed sworn statement that this is what you're going to do or what you're not going to do. And then I swear them under oath. Done hundreds and hundreds of those. Most people are smart enough to know what the right answer is. All right? Future intention. You have no future intention. If you've been arrested, if you've had drug issues, if you've had credit issues, any of this stuff, you have no future intention of doing it again. I can't make it any more clear than that, and I'm not telling you to lie. But if that's the truth, that's what you're going to write, that's what you're going to say. You have no future intention. Okay. Does everybody get where I'm coming from? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to speak to you as if you're my daughter. I have a 24-year-old. She's in college. I say we have. And whatever I would tell her, I would tell you. Alcohol issues, it's the same thing. I'm not going to stand up here and just go over the whole thing. They're going to ask you, what do you drink? How much? With who? What are the circumstances? They don't want people, again, with substance abuse issues having security clearance and access to classified information. Okay? I can tell you that the guys at SEAL Team 6 that got Osama bin Laden, they all had top secret security clearances, and if any of them had any of these problems, they would not have been in SEAL Team 6. I can tell you if Dr. Weaver had any of these problems, he would not have had the type of career that he had. And I'm sure he can tell you stories. Financial problems. Again, if you take my advice and do what I said earlier, you're absolutely going to avoid any of these issues because you're either not going to have them to begin with or you're going to fix the ones that you have. Okay? It's not unusual for people to fall behind in their bills. As human beings, we all run into issues. It was tough for me to pay for college because at the time I was going, my parents just didn't have the money to put me through it. Just didn't have it. So I know sometimes we have to do certain things, whether it's, take cash advances or whatever on our credit cards. It can lead to potential disaster if you don't control it. Everybody here have a credit card? Raise your hand, credit card, let me see. Okay, yeah, we pretty much live our life based on using credit, Mac Visa cards, so just be careful with that. If you do have a problem, I made a few notes here for you. Contact your creditor, whether it's one or more, whoever you have the issue with. When you run that credit report, remember I said you're going to do it 3 times a year. If something pops up, call them. There'll be an 800 number on the back of the credit report. Let them know, listen, this is, Kevin Crane, I see I have an issue here. I'd like to resolve it. How do I go about doing that? Now, there will be a mark, of course, on your credit report that you had the issue, but more important, when we talk about mitigating circumstances, you took effort to fix the problem. It's the ones that take no effort, they're the ones that are going to be denied a security clearance. But you took the effort, you're going to contact them, you're going to keep all records, who you spoke to, what the date was, what action you took, any copies of canceled checks that you might have sent in, any documentation that they sent you, that you've made a plan to fix this, anything, so that when you do get interviewed for your clearance, you can take that documentation into the investigation and say, listen, this is what I've done. I recognize that I had an issue with my credit, in this case, this is what I did to fix it. So keep all that documentation, and chances are, because of you not have mitigating circumstances, they'll most likely grant you a clearance, unless it's real serious. But I can't imagine, as a college student, you'd ever have that type of an issue. Okay. Intentional omission or falsification. So many people get denied a security clearance, again, just to reiterate, because they did not list something. I can't tell you how many hundreds, not real high in the hundreds, but hundreds of people, they didn't list they used drugs. They didn't list they had a simple arrest because they got caught with an open can of beer. Simple stuff. They should have listed it, but they didn't. And I would ask them, because I had to put in my report, why didn't you list this? It was clear that, they'd ask you, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever used any type of illegal drug? Has alcohol ever caused you a problem? And you listed no. Why? Because I was afraid I wouldn't get my security clearance. Because I was afraid I wouldn't get my security clearance. Had they listed those things in and of themselves would not have been enough to deny the security clearance. But now they have the weight of the intentional omission or falsification, and the adjudicator, the person who reads the investigation, is going to, they're done. They're done because they intentionally omitted or falsified their standard form 86. So I just want to alleviate or put to rest any fears that you have. Anything that might possibly be in your background, don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Don't lose sleep over it. There's not anything that you could possibly have done unless you murdered somebody last night before this program. There's nothing that you have done that can't be fixed. Nothing. We can pretty much fix anything as long as you care. If you care to fix anything that's in your background, Dr. Weaver, myself, will work as a team to help you. All I ask is that someday, if we help you to achieve what it is that you can become in your life, and you can achieve greatness. I was a very simple, poor country boy. I was nothing special, but some people helped me along the way because we all need some help. Nobody ever does it alone. Nobody. So if we help you as a professor, as retired federal agent that happens to know a little bit about this stuff, if we help you, I expect you to help other people. All right? It's a very simple request. If we help you, and we will, everybody here that's going to graduate and wants a job in some sort of criminal justice intelligence type of a field, we will absolutely help you to do it. I even know somebody professionally that does the resumes for the federal government. She owns the business, has been doing it since 1996, has about 8 or 10 books on the subject, covers everything. Because for the federal government, you're going to have to fill out some sort of a resume. Well, I know this woman who does this, and I'm actually going to do a webinar with her. So we also have contacts for people who can help you to do the resumes that the government requests. And typically it takes about 80 days now to get a job with the government. When Dr. Weaver and I were young, it took about 2 years almost. Maybe not so much with the military. They had you were done. You were there. But for me, to become a federal agent, it literally, from the time I was a senior at Penn State, when I filled out that application, and there was no computer technology that we could use for that process back then, it was pen and paper. It took 2 years before I finally got the call. But today, they're trying to streamline everything, use technology to the max, try to get the best and the brightest. You could absolutely have a federal career in roughly 80 days. But let's not let this stop you, okay? Any questions so far? Question?
You mentioned like intentional omission. What if it was like, I mean, after you reviewed it, but it was still accidental? Like,
If it was accidental omission?
yeah, like you accidentally didn't say something.
Okay, well maybe you forgot about something. Is that what you're saying? Okay, it's possible. The question was, what if you left something out but it wasn't intentional? I guess every case stands on its own. If it was something to do with drugs or arrests, it may be harder to show that that was not intentional because we typically know what we've done. If it's something that you were not aware of, maybe a credit issue, that absolutely could happen. Again, oftentimes people don't run their credit reports, so they don't know, or maybe they haven't gotten bills. I can tell you one example. Oftentimes, if a credit agency that you had a credit card with doesn't get their money, it could even be for a car. They may repossess your vehicle because you didn't pay. Maybe it takes 3 or 4 months of non-payment. They come and repossess it. But what you didn't know, if that car was worth $15,000, but they sold it at auction for $10,000, guess who owes that $5,000? You owe it. And guess what that company does to try to collect it? They file a civil court action. So they now have a judgment against you, and you may not have known that. That's one example there. If an agent says, what are you going to do about this judgment? And you say, what judgment? I didn't know I had a judgment. That's right here in your credit report. Oh, I've not seen my credit report. That's not going to be you guys. But this could be an example of maybe why you would not have listed something because you just didn't know, in this particular example, that the car agency filed a criminal judgment against you and it was granted. That'll be in the credit report. So here's another reason why you want to do that credit report check every 4 months to see if you have any issue, whether it's you or not. And believe it or not, those credit reports, they're 100% right, every single one of them, every single day. Is that right? No, it's not. They mess up all the time. They absolutely do. Don't let your credit get messed up because the credit agency or somebody made a report and it really wasn't you. That's why you want to look at these things throughout the course of the year to make sure that everything is good to go. Everything's good to go. But that is a good question. There could be situations where you didn't list something, but it wasn't intentional omission, and that would be an example. Okay. Detailed information and guidance. That's my website. I think most of you have it. I'm not going to go into that too much more. Although I will say, again, I just can't reiterate enough. If you know you're going into a field and you're going to need a background check or a security clearance, please take those proactive steps. Whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, I don't care. You have some time, do whatever it takes. Now let me tell you this. This is advice that I never got when I was your age, and probably nobody will ever tell you again. You remember when I said, run your FBI fingerprints, keep a copy of the results, and do it until the time you graduate, so you have an updated copy? Same with the state police, same with the credit reports. And I said, fill out your SF-86 and keep it updated. Everybody remember? I just want to know. Raise your hand. You remember when I said that? Okay, I've got your attention. Good. All right, this is what you're going to do. When you start looking for jobs, one way you can start looking is go onto my website, go down to the bottom where it says, when you are interviewed by, could be somebody from Department of Defense, anybody want to work for NSA? Anybody want to work for CIA, FBI, Homeland Security? Okay, excellent. You're all going to go through this, trust me. This is the God's truth. When you sit there during that interview process, once we get you squared away with all this stuff, once we get your resume squared away, and I'll recommend, you don't have to use this agency, but I'll give you the name when the time comes. Once we get you into the interview, that's the thing, we've got to get you into the interview. We're going to presume your grades are good, your credentials are good, and they're eventually, after they ask you questions, they're going to give you an opportunity. And they're going to say, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask us? It's not unusual to have this happen during any type of an interview process. And this is what you're going to say. You may want to write this down or remember this. We're going to say the person who's interviewing you, the human resource person, is Mrs. Smith. And Mrs. Smith says, John, Jane, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me at this point? And you're going to say, well, yes, Mrs. Smith, I do have a few. I understand that this position requires a top secret clearance. Is that correct? That's going to be your first question. Whatever type level clearance it needs. I'm using top secret. And Mrs. Smith is going to say, yes, it does. And then you're going to say, Mrs. Smith, I understand that there's going to be an investigation and you're going to need me to fill out a standard form 86. Is that correct, Mrs. Smith? And Mrs. Smith is going to say, yes, that's correct too. And here's where you're going to seal the deal. This is where you seal the deal. You're going to say, well, Mrs. Smith, it just so happens that if you allow me to open my briefcase, I have a completed standard form 86. I know all the criteria. I have no issues with alcohol, drugs, arrests, financial matters, foreign travel, foreign connections, misuse of information technology. There is nothing, Mrs. Smith, on my security clearance application that will stop me from being granted a top secret security clearance. And in addition, Mrs. Smith, may I show you one more thing? Maybe two. And she'll say, well, of course. Now she's going to be stunned that you, from your, I'm telling you, it never happens, but it will now. I did tell this up to Penn State too. So if you're competing with them, you will. But now she sees that you've got this form actually filled out, and you're telling her, I don't have any issues. I can pass this investigation, and here's my supporting documentation. You're not going to give her the SF-86. It's not appropriate to do that yet. But you're going to say, I ran a copy of my FBI. I've never been arrested. I ran a copy of my Pennsylvania State Police. Never been arrested. In fact, I know that most clearances are denied because of financial problems. Here's a copy of all 3 of my credit reports. I have no issues. So, Mrs. Smith, if you're looking to hire somebody from York College, I can get the security clearance with no problems. And I know sometimes it takes up to a year. And Mrs. Smith in her head, once she gets, back to reality and sees there's actually a student that's done this, and in her 20, 25, 30 years of interviewing students, at NSA or CIA or wherever, nobody's ever done it. I've never heard of it. She's never heard of it either. But you have it all. And she's thinking, I just interviewed, 10, 20, 30 students that graduated for these couple of entry-level positions, and, you know, I don't know if they can pass a security clearance investigation. Most college students have an issue somewhere along the line, so Mrs. Smith, the HR person, knows this. She knows that if I want to hire somebody, I want to get them to work in that 80 days. I don't want to have them wait up to a year because they have an issue with their security clearance. And if this person from York College is telling me they've done their SF-86, there are no issues, they're showing me their FBI, their state police, their credit reports, everything. There's nothing there. Who are they going to hire? The other 20, 30 students that had none of that? Or are they going to hire you? Seems simple to me. Who wants to be that person? Raise your hand. Yeah, absolutely. Nobody does this. You can ask Dr. Weaver. I'm sure he's never heard of anybody ever doing that. I'm sure of it. Any questions about anything that I've said up to this point? I like to say speak now or forever hold your peace. Is there anything? Again, don't be embarrassed. If you're in that breakout session, we'll talk about some personal things, but anything here, anything at all?
Could you speak to the issue of polygraph that
Sure.
hasn't come up? I
Sure.
don't know where that is.
Sure. My office actually was the first one on the East Coast to begin to use polygraph examiners, polygraphers, if you will. Most of them came from the Army. They had 20 plus years of doing polygraphs there. Oftentimes, with security clearances, you come across an issue, we see that you've used drugs. I've never used drugs. Your references have stated that they've used drugs with you. I've never used drugs. Your police report says you were busted for possession of cocaine. I've never used drugs. Well, we've come, as an agent, we've come to an impasse in the investigation, Mr. Smith. Here we have information showing that you have used drugs, but you're claiming not. We do have a tool available to us that can help us resolve this issue, and that would be the polygraph. So when could we set you up for a polygraph to resolve this? Next week okay with you? And they would oftentimes say, yeah, sure. They're thinking they're going to come in and beat the polygraph. Every single one failed. Every one that we had failed. Now, this is specifically for the security clearance process. If you're going to work for an agency such as NSA, CIA, probably FBI, anything counterintelligence related, they're probably going to do lifestyle polygraph examinations. They are not typically yes and no answers for the investigation for the security clearance. Have you ever used cocaine in the past? No. Fail. But for these other agencies, they're going to ask you, and oftentimes periodically they'll do it throughout the course of the year, lifestyle stuff, counterintelligence type questions where you have to give open answers. It's not just yes and no, because they're going to see how your body reacts. So that's a little bit different, but we do use the polygraph as a tool when necessary. You cannot be forced to do it, and it cannot be used against you if you choose not to do it. So there's a big difference there. However, if you believe in your heart that you're telling the truth, and for whatever odd reason they have information showing what's not the truth, then I say, by all means, take the polygraph. Use it to your favor. If you believe what you're telling is true, then use it. But again, be honest from the beginning, and you're never going to have to worry about being asked to take a polygraph test. It's a good question. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything? Nothing? Yes, yes, sir.
What if you come from an area that has a drug problem? Like you need people who are, or had friends that use drugs and you were around them, but you never used them yourself?
Fair question. If you've come from an area where there's a lot of drug usage, you have friends that use them, but you yourself have never used them, then listen, tell them. I've been in situations where people that I know have used drugs. I myself have not, and you won't have anybody ever tell you that I did. I don't have any arrests for drugs. I've never, used drugs. I have no intention of ever, but I do know people because of the area I came from where it is somewhat prevalent. I have nothing to do with it. And that's what I would tell them. Good question. Anything else? Okay, so you know how to contact me. If you do download my book, and if you leave me a positive review, email me. I will send you a signed copy of my paperback book. I'll mail it to you, no charge to you. If you get the 99-cent Kindle, download it, read it, give me a positive review, let me know that you did. I'll check for the review. I did this with Penn State, sent them a ton of books because they did it. And I'll sign it, whatever you want, okay? I hope this was of value to you, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm here to help you anytime you need me. Thank you very much.
On behalf of New York College, Kevin, thanks again for coming out today. We'd like to present you with a coffee mug to commemorate your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Once again, let's give him a round of applause. For those who are majoring in intelligence analysis, you can just hang back as everybody else departs. We'll move back over to the humanities building.